out of the vehicle, now.
I'm not asking again.
Officer, I am complying. You have no legal basis to escalate this stop.
You lawyers always think you're above the law. Hands where I can see them.
You're making a grave mistake. I am the Chief Deputy State Prosecutor.
Strickland spotted a vehicle that triggered his internal alarms. It wasn't speeding, it wasn't swerving, it was simply a brand new charcoal gray Range Rover being driven by a black woman. In Strickland's world, that combination didn't fit. The woman behind the wheel was Evelyn Vance, a 52-year-old legal titan who had spent the last 2 decades putting the city's most dangerous criminals behind bars. What Strickland did next, ignoring protocol, discarding common sense, and letting his bias take the wheel, would serve as a devastating masterclass in how unchecked power can dismantle a life in minutes. Before we dive into the details, tell us where you're watching from. If you believe in holding power accountable, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We bring you the stories the system tries to bury. The morning had started with a rare moment of maternal pride for Evelyn. She had just left the campus of Shelby State University after dropping off her twin sons for their senior year. At 21 years old, they were the light of her life. Young men raised with the same discipline and integrity that Evelyn brought to the courtroom every single day. She was currently the Chief Deputy State Prosecutor for the Violent Crimes Division. Her conviction rate was legendary. Her name alone made defense attorneys sweat. On this particular Tuesday, she was mentally rehearsing her opening statement for a high-profile capital murder trial scheduled to begin at 1:00 p.m. She was dressed for battle in a tailored navy suit, a pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother, and her hair pulled back in an immaculate professional bun. Evelyn was driving in the right lane, adhering strictly to the 65-mile-per-hour limit, her mind focused on the intricacies of jury selection. She was a woman who knew the law better than the people who wrote it. She knew the vehicle code, the penal code, and the constitutional amendments backward and forward. She drove with the caution of someone who knows exactly what happens when you give law enforcement a reason to look twice. But Officer Strickland wasn't looking for a reason. He was looking for a target. He was parked on the shoulder radar gun, silent eyes scanning. When Evelyn's SUV passed him, he didn't see a mother or a prosecutor. He saw an expensive car and a driver who, in his biased estimation, looked like she might be transporting drugs or money. He pulled out, accelerated, and tailed her for 2 miles, waiting for a mistake that wasn't happening. Finally, impatient and determined, he flipped on his lights. Strickland was part of a specialized interdiction unit, a team that was unofficially tasked with seizing assets and making high-impact arrests. His sergeant, a man who valued statistics over civil liberties, had often praised Strickland for his proactive policing. But proactive was often just a euphemism for profiling. Strickland believed he could spot a criminal by the way they sat, the way they drove, or the car they owned. He called it intuition. The courts would later call it unconstitutional. As he followed the Range Rover, he radioed dispatch. "Show me out on a traffic stop southbound I-40. Late model luxury SUV. Tag is obscured." That was the first lie. The tag was perfectly visible. Evelyn saw the blue lights flashing in her rearview mirror. Her stomach tightened, a reflexive reaction shared by black drivers across America, regardless of their status or innocence. But she remained calm. She signaled, pulled over to the wide shoulder safely, and put the vehicle in park. She lowered her window, turned off the radio, and placed both hands on the top of the steering wheel, fingers spread. She knew the drill. She had taught her sons this drill since they were 16. "Compliance, communication, and caution," she would tell them. She watched in the side mirror as Strickland approached. He didn't walk with the caution of an officer approaching a motorist. He walked with the swagger of a hunter approaching a trapped animal. Hand resting near his holster chin, up sunglasses hiding his eyes. Strickland reached the window and looked inside. He saw the leather interior, the briefcase on the passenger seat, and the composed woman looking back at him. It didn't fit his narrative, and that annoyed him. "License and registration," he barked, skipping the standard greeting. Evelyn didn't move her hands. She looked him in the eye, her expression neutral, but firm. "Officer, I am happy to comply. My license is in my purse on the floorboard and my registration is in the glove box. I am going to reach for them now. Is that all right?" It was a courtesy she didn't legally owe him, but one she offered for safety. Strickland sneered. "Just get the ID. And do you know why I pulled you over?" Evelyn moved slowly, retrieving her wallet. "I do not, officer. I was traveling at the speed limit and maintaining my lane." She handed him her driver's license. It was her personal license, not her credentials. She believed in fair play and didn't want to big league him unless necessary. Strickland snatched the plastic card. "You crossed the fog line back there, twice. That's a lane violation, and your tag frame is covering the state name. That's another violation." Evelyn knew this was nonsense. Her car had lane assist technology that vibrated the wheel if she even drifted an inch. It hadn't gone off once. "Officer, my vehicle is equipped with lane keeping assist. I did not cross the line, and my tag frame is the standard dealer frame issued by the dealership." Strickland didn't like her tone. He didn't like that she wasn't nervous. He didn't like that she spoke with the diction of a professor rather than the deference of a suspect. To a man like Strickland, intelligence in a suspect was interpreted as arrogance. "You got an attitude, ma'am?" he asked, leaning closer. "I'm asking you simple questions. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed?" Evelyn's patience was thinning, but her discipline held. "I am not having an attitude, officer. I am answering your questions. I dropped my children off at the university and I am heading to work. Now, if you're going to write me a citation, please do so. I have a court appearance at 1 o'clock. That was the trigger. The mention of court and work in a dismissive tone bruised Strickland's ego. He decided right then that he wasn't going to let this woman drive away with just a ticket. He wanted to find something. He wanted to assert dominance. "Step out of the car," Strickland ordered, taking a step back and resting his hand on his baton. Evelyn paused. She knew the case law. Pennsylvania v. Mims allowed officers to order drivers out of the vehicle for safety, but it was usually reserved for situations with a credible threat or suspicion. "Officer, for my safety and yours, I prefer to remain in the vehicle. I have provided my identification. There is no articulable suspicion for you to ask me to exit." Strickland's face flushed red. He wasn't used to people citing legal standards to him on the side of the road. "I didn't ask you, I told you. Step out of the vehicle now or I will remove you." This was the pivot point. This was the moment where a seasoned officer would have de-escalated, realized he was dealing with a law-abiding citizen and walked away. But Strickland was not a seasoned officer. He was a bully with a badge. He ripped the door open. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes hardening into the steel gaze that had broken down murderers on the witness stand. "Officer," she said, her voice dropping an octave, deadly serious. "You are making a grave mistake. I am the Chief Deputy State Prosecutor for this county. If you touch me, you are violating my civil rights and exposing yourself to significant liability." Most officers, upon hearing that title, would have paused. They would have hesitated, maybe asked for proof, maybe called a supervisor. Not Strickland. In his mind, she was lying. Black women driving Range Rovers didn't work as chief prosecutors. They were lying to get out of a ticket. "Yeah, and I'm the police commissioner," Strickland mocked. "Get out." He reached in, grabbed her left arm, and yanked. Evelyn wasn't a large woman, but she wasn't frail. However, the sudden violence of the action caught her off guard. She stumbled out of the car, her heels clicking on the gravel shoulder. "Turn around, hands behind your back." "I am not resisting," Evelyn shouted, ensuring her voice was being picked up by his body microphone. "I am complying under duress. You are assaulting a constitutional officer." Strickland didn't care. He spun her around, wrenching her shoulder, and slapped the handcuffs on her wrists. He ratcheted them tight, too tight. The pain was sharp, but the humiliation was worse. Cars were whizzing by on the interstate. People were slowing down to gawk. To them, she looked like a criminal. To Strickland, she was a trophy. "You're under arrest for failure to comply and resisting an officer." He grunted, marching her toward his patrol car. "You can tell your stories to the judge." Evelyn Vance, a woman who commanded respect from judges and senators, was shoved into the back of a cramped plastic-seated patrol car. The smell of stale sweat and disinfectant filled her nose. She took a deep breath, compartmentalizing the trauma. She needed to be the lawyer now, not the victim. She watched through the plexiglass divider as Strickland walked back to her vehicle. He was going to search it. He had no warrant, no consent, and no probable cause. He was manufacturing a crime to justify the assault he had just committed. "This is an illegal search," she said clearly to the empty air, knowing the interior camera was rolling. "There is no probable cause. Fruit of the poisonous tree." Strickland dove into her car with the enthusiasm of a treasure hunter. He tossed the contents of her glove box onto the passenger seat. He opened the center console, rummaging through mints and charging cables. Then he saw the briefcase in the back seat. It was a heavy leather litigation case. He popped the latches. Inside were stacks of manila folders, red welds, and sealed evidence envelopes marked "State Evidence, Do Not Open." Sitting right on top was a leather wallet with a gold badge recessed into the cover. It read, "Office of the District Attorney, Chief Deputy Prosecutor." Next to it was her official ID card. Strickland stared at the badge. For a second, his heart stopped. The reality of what she had said crashed into his bias. But then, the denial kicked in. It was too terrifying to be true. If this was real, his career was over. So his brain rejected it. "It's fake," he told himself. "She got a fake badge made. These files are probably stolen identities." He picked up one of the files. It was a murder case he had seen on the news. She's a fraud. She's stealing information. He convinced himself that he had stumbled onto a massive identity theft ring. He was going to be a hero. He walked back to the patrol car, holding the badge and ID. He opened the rear door. "Nice prop," he sneered, dangling the badge in front of her. "Where did you get this? A costume shop impersonating a public official is a felony. Add that to the list." Evelyn looked at him with a mixture of pity and fury. "Officer, look at the ID. Look at the holograms. Call your watch commander. Ask for Sergeant Miller or Lieutenant Graves. They know me. If you book me on these charges, there will be no coming back for you." Strickland laughed. "I'm not calling anyone until I'm done tossing your car." He slammed the door and went back to the Range Rover to tear the trunk apart. He was looking for drugs now, desperate to find something that would make the fake badge make sense. He found nothing but a gym bag and a spare tire. 10 minutes later, a second patrol car pulled up. It was the supervisor Strickland had requested for transport, expecting a rookie. Instead, it was Sergeant Thomas Miller, a 25-year veteran with gray hair and a tired demeanor. Miller had worked homicide for a decade before moving back to patrol to coast into retirement. He knew every prosecutor, every judge, and every clerk in the county. He stepped out of his vehicle, adjusting his belt. "What do we have, Strickland?" Miller asked, walking toward the younger officer who was leaning against Evelyn's car, looking triumphant. "Big bust, Sarge." Strickland beamed. "Stopped her for lane violation. She got combative, refused to exit. I pulled her out. Found a fake DA badge and a bunch of stolen court files in the car. She's claiming she's the chief deputy." Miller frowned. He looked at the Range Rover. He looked at the briefcase open on the hood. He walked over and looked at the files. He saw the name on the file, State v. Johnson. He recognized the handwriting on the sticky notes. A cold dread washed over him. He picked up the badge. It was heavy, authentic. He looked at the ID card. The face was familiar, very familiar. Miller turned slowly toward Strickland's patrol car. He walked to the rear window and peered in. Evelyn Vance was sitting straight up, her eyes locking onto his. Miller felt his knees go weak. He had testified in a case Evelyn prosecuted 3 years ago. She had grilled him on chain of custody. She was brilliant, terrifying, and absolutely legitimate. Miller turned to Strickland, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and rage. "Strickland, give me the keys to the cuffs." "What, why?" Strickland asked, confused. "She's a suspect." "Give me the damn keys," Miller roared, snatching them from Strickland's hand. He ripped the back door open. "Miss Vance," Miller stammered. "Miss Vance, I am so sorry. I am so sorry." He leaned in to unlock the cuffs. Evelyn rubbed her wrists where red welts had already formed. She didn't say a word to Miller yet. She stepped out of the car, straightening her blazer, regaining her dignity with every inch of height she recovered. She looked at Strickland, who was standing there, mouth agape, the color draining from his face as the realization finally hit him like a freight train. "Sergeant Miller," Evelyn said, her voice ice cold. "I want this officer's name and badge number immediately. I want the body camera footage preserved, and I want you to call the chief of police and the district attorney. Tell them I have been arrested for driving while black." "Ms. Vance, we can—" Miller started. "We can nothing," she cut him off. "I am going to my car. I am going to court. And tomorrow, I am going to end this man's career." The fallout was immediate and nuclear. By the time Evelyn arrived at the courthouse late for the first time in her career, the district attorney had already been notified. The trial was granted a continuance. Evelyn went to the hospital to document her injuries, nerve damage in her wrists and bruising on her shoulder. The body camera footage was pulled that afternoon. The chief of police watched it in silence, his head in his hands. It was indefensible. The video was released to the public 3 days later. The internet exploded. There was Strickland, smug and arrogant, dismissing a woman who knew more about the law than he would ever learn. There was the moment he called her badge a prop. There was the rough handling. The comments section was a firestorm. He arrested the prosecutor. This is what we mean when we say they don't listen. If they do this to a DA, imagine what they do to a regular person. Internal Affairs launched a probe that peeled back the layers of Strickland's career. It turned out this wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the first time he had picked a fight he couldn't win. There were 14 prior complaints against Officer Strickland. 14. Racial profiling, excessive force rudeness, illegal searches. All of them had been dismissed by his previous supervisors as unfounded or exonerated. He was a stats guy, a producer, so the department protected him. But they couldn't protect him now. The district attorney's office took an unprecedented step. They placed Kyle Strickland on the Brady list, a list of officers who are considered dishonest or unreliable. This meant that in any case where Strickland was a witness, the prosecution had to inform the defense that he was a liar. Effectively, he was useless as a police officer. He could never testify again. Every single arrest he had made in the last 6 years was now under review. Defense attorneys were lining up to file appeals. He hadn't just ruined his own career. He had jeopardized hundreds of cases. Strickland was placed on administrative leave, then fired 4 weeks later. The termination letter was blistering. It cited gross incompetence, bias-based policing, illegal search and seizure, and conduct unbecoming. He was stripped of his certification, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. He was 29, and his professional life was over. But the civil suit was just beginning. Evelyn Vance sued the police department, and Strickland personally. She didn't do it for the money. She did it to force discovery. She wanted the emails, the text messages, the training manuals. She wanted to prove that Strickland wasn't a rogue apple, but the product of a rotten tree. The evidence she uncovered was damning. Texts between officers joking about hunting in minority neighborhoods. Supervisors encouraging pretext stops. A culture that rewarded aggression and punished de-escalation. The county attorneys took one look at the deposition of Sergeant Miller, who admitted on record that Strickland had a reputation for targeting black drivers, and they folded. They knew a jury would destroy them. They settled for $6.5 million. It was one of the largest individual payouts for a civil rights violation in the state's history. Evelyn Vance stood on the steps of the courthouse the day the settlement was announced. She looked tired but resolute. The reporters shoved microphones in her face. "Ms. Vance, do you feel justice has been served?" one asked. Evelyn paused, looking out at the city she served. "Justice," she said slowly, "would be me driving my children to school without fear. Justice would be Officer Strickland never having a badge in the first place. This money is not justice. It is a penalty. It is a tax on racism." She took a breath. "I had a badge. I had a title. I had power. And it didn't protect me. If a chief prosecutor can be dragged out of her car for nothing, what chance does a nurse, a teacher, or a student have? We didn't win today. We just survived." The cameras clicked. The world moved on to the next outrage. But in the quiet moments, the questions linger. Kyle Strickland is now a civilian working in a warehouse blaming politics for his downfall. Evelyn Vance still drives to work, but now when she sees blue lights, her heart hammers against her ribs just a little harder. The money didn't fix the fear. The firing didn't erase the memory of the handcuffs. We have to ask ourselves, why does it take a victim with a law degree to get accountability? Why do we wait for the viral video before we believe the stories that have been told for decades? Do you think officers with a history of bias complaints should be automatically decertified? Or do you think the system is working as intended? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice matters, and sharing this story helps keep the pressure on. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.